Hello, Dr. Greg here, and we're going to start, or I'm going to start a series on sugar. I've been asked a lot about how to get off of sugar, what I can do to mitigate its effects, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to do a deep dive in sugar, and I don't know how many videos it's going to take, but it's going to take a few. To start off, I want to just go through a series of things that about 15 of them that sugar has an effect on. Sugar has an effect on many more than 15, but these are just little facts that I want you to be aware of. So what we're going to do on the series is I'm going to go through the history of sugar. I'm going to go through the effects of sugar on your body, the effects of sugar on your brain, sugar and anxiety, sugar and your skin, sugar and aging, etc. And then also I'm going to go how you can combat the sugar cravings. We're going to try and do that. Okay, here we go. Here's the first. We're going to go through 15 little facts about sugar, and this is just not an exhaustive list, but it's a list that we can start with. So again, we're going to start with this list. The next week is probably going to start with the history of sugar, and then we're going to go on from there. So one of the things that I find to help you get off of sugar is to know what it does to you, know the full extent of its history, how actually sugar manipulates you, and how individuals put sugar in certain foods to get you addicted. Now here's one fact that I'm going to just give you, and I think many of you may already know this, but sugar is more addictive than cocaine. Let me say that again. Sugar is more addictive than cocaine. Now, you know how damaging cocaine can be. Sugar is not expressed in mental issues. It's expressed in physiological issues like your heart, your blood vessels, your nerves. It also affects your brain, but differently than how cocaine affects you. So that sugar craving you have is actually an addiction. It is also interesting that after you have a meal, if you have a craving for a sweet, that's a sign of insulin resistance. In other words, you have a meal, you get plenty of nutrient from the meal if you're eating a decent one, not a McDonald's hamburger, but say you're having a good meat, vegetables, whatever, and you still have cravings for something to eat. You've actually ate a full plate of food, but you still have cravings for a sweet snack. You don't need it. Your body doesn't need it, but your brain wants you to have it. That's actually a sign of insulin resistance. The food that you eat is not being processed and stored in your cells. It's being floating in your bloodstream, and your brain thinks you're starving and it needs more food. So that's just an interesting little point or little fact about insulin resistance, sugar, and cravings after you eat. So here we go. This is not an exhaustive list, but it is an interesting one anyway. Some of you may not even know some of these facts. So the first one is sugar at one time in history was considered a spice. It was just considered a spice. It occurred around the Crusades, where the Crusaders discovered this white spice, and they called it sugar. So that's one of the facts. Also, sugar has been used or was used as medicine for quite some time. The other thing is European royalty would make giant sculptures out of sugar as for their parties. And in Europe, it started as a luxury. In other words, the common individual did not have access to sugar. Only the royalties had access to sugar. It wasn't until the 19th century, the 1800s, when sugar became available to the masses when the taxes on sugar were dropped. Sugarcane is where sugar comes from, was domesticated or processed or refined in New Guinea over 10,000 years ago. Here's another thing. Eating sugar can give you wrinkles. Did you know that? Okay. Sugar also can be used as a food preservative. Now, here's an interesting little fact about this. There is a profession, an actual job, a profession, and they're called food engineers. And their job is to make the food tasty and you become addicted. They use sugar a lot for you to become addicted to anything. It could be as simple as lunch meat. There's sugar in lunch meat, for God's sakes. What the heck's going on there? Now, here's something about our friends, cats and dogs. Dogs have a sweet tooth, but cats do not have a sweet tooth. I thought that was interesting. Now, here's something very frightening. Americans consume about 7 pounds of sugar a year. Now, when we finish with this series, you're going to realize how damaging sugar is to your entire body. It really is an evil food. It's not even a food, it's a drug. We consume on average, 7 pounds a year. Now that is horrible for our health. Now, here's another thing. We talk about Alzheimer's and dementia, and I just finished a series on cognitive decline and exercise. Sugar has been linked to cognitive decline. Eating a lot of sugar can lead to cognitive decline. And if you're eating 7 pounds on average a year, that's average. There are people that are eating a lot more than 7 pounds, and people are eating less. That can be pretty damaging for your brain, and no wonder we have a pandemic, not a pandemic, but a rise in Alzheimer's and dementia. Sugar affects it. And we're going to go into all these in future videos to explain why this is the case. Now, there are many different kinds of sugars. So when you're looking for sugar, you could be fooled when the label says dextrose or sorbitol or levulose. Those are all sugars. Now, the thing about looking at a label, it usually has the most prevalent ingredient first, and it goes down. So if you have something like, let's say sugar is listed as the 4th ingredient, then the 5th or 6th is dextrose, and then the 7th or 8th is sorbitol. You have a lot of sugar in there. It should be up higher. So it's sort of to fool you a little bit in terms of eating the food and knowing that there's a certain amount of sugar in there that is actually more than what they're saying. And I also I covered this before, sugar is addictive, big time. And sugar has been in a lot of songs and poetry. It's a very, it's as bad as cocaine in terms of, there's a lot of songs in cocaine, there's a lot of songs about, and poetry about sugar. Sugar is near and dear to our hearts. We're all addicted. I'm addicted to sugar. It's one of the most difficult substances to get away from, to stop eating. Because number one, it's in everything. Number two, we're addicted. And number three, our body and our brain craves it, and we have ruined our insulin system to the point where we are thinking we're starving all the time. This could be the key to a lot of dietary issues. It actually has ruined individuals' lives so that they can't even lose weight. Or they have diabetes, or they have pancreatic cancer. The pancreas is responsible for releasing insulin that actually helps modulate our sugar intake, or not our sugar intake, our sugar concentrations in our body. And cancer loves sugar. So this, right now, this is just the tip of the iceberg of what we're going to talk about. So this is Dr. Greg, changing the way we look at health.